Get into it. Coach Colin here. Supreme Court ruling. I'm sure people have heard, but what does it mean? Supreme Court has ruled there will be presidential immunity. And let me tell you something. Everybody's talking about what a big win this is for Trump. Everybody's talking about that, okay? And what I'm going to be showing you, let's just get into that real quick. I'm going to be showing you what Trump had to say about the ruling. Then we're going to get a little breakdown into what this ruling actually means for Trump and his cases, because it is very positive there. And then we're going to hear what Joe Biden actually has to say. And I have to say, in the clip of Joe Biden, where was this version of Joe? I guess maybe because he has a teleprompter, it's a little different. I don't know, but I'm not going to say he was on point. I'm not going to say he was like great, but at least he was just straight sentences, barely any mumbling. It was, but here's the thing. Everybody keeps saying what a big win it is for Trump. This is also, no matter what you hear Joe say throughout this video, this is a big win for him as well. Because if there's any way he can link any of this Ukraine or the China allegations or the Hunter stuff, if he at all can link any of this to official acts, then he will be covered from prosecution for what so many people believe he should be prosecuted for. So you're going to hear him kind of talk it down and talk about how terrible it is. But if anybody should be happy about this, it's Joe Biden. Let's just be real right now. Let's get into the first clip. This is what Trump had to say about this big win for him.
The timing of all of this, President Trump has given a statement to Fox News Digital in the wake of this decision. I'll read it for you here, and Jonathan Turley, get your take on it, the other side. Former President Trump said, "I have been harassed by the Democrat Party, Joe Biden, Obama, and their thugs, fascists, and communists for years. And now the courts have spoken. This is a big win for our Constitution and for democracy. Now I am free to campaign like anyone else. We are leading in every poll by a lot, and we will make America great again." So that's his take. Although I mentioned earlier, there's another date on the calendar. This is his July 11th sentencing in New York. And I agree, Jonathan, with him when he says, "I'm free to campaign like anyone else." Will that be true at the end of the day on July 11th as well?
He'll be fine July 11th, 100%. And if you don't know, that's coming in about, a little over a week. He will be sitting down for sentencing, and we'll see what that's all about. He's not going to jail. He's just not. Let's just be real here. On both sides, people who want to see him go to jail, people who think it's appalling that he could he's not going into a prison. It's absolutely ridiculous. If they try house arrest, maybe they try house arrest. I don't know. I don't even know. But I think it's just going to be probation, and that's it. Because this is not even a what happened with him, the 34 counts, they don't even get prosecuted as felonies. It only happened to Donald Trump because he's Donald Trump and because he's running for president. But you all know that. Now let's get into a little bit of what this means for Donald Trump. Let's listen to this.
We are following breaking news. The Supreme Court has ruled in a 6-3 decision that a president has absolute immunity against prosecution for official acts, but they are not immune from prosecution for unofficial acts. Donald Trump has argued that he is immune from prosecution for his actions on January 6th because he was in office at the time. He's facing federal charges out of Washington, D.C. The special counsel's argument was that no one is above the law, not even the president. The decision is expected to have implications for some of Trump's other cases as well. It will also set a precedent for other presidents in the future. Let's bring in CBS News chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford, who is with us from Washington. So, Jan, obviously, we've been talking for a good part of the morning about what this means, but what are the central questions that will have to be decided that are in sort of your immediate viewpoint?
Well, I mean, I think this goes now, of course, back to Judge Tanya Chutkan, who's going to have her work cut out for her. I mean, she's got a lot of work to do. She's going to get some papers from Special Counsel Jack Smith about what is considered an unofficial act that the special counsel could go forward with on a trial against President Trump. This is no doubt, this ruling, I think, a win for President Trump, but it's not a complete slam dunk victory. It does not foreclose the door to prosecution by any means. It rejects his most sweeping arguments about immunity. He had argued that he was absolutely immune from prosecution, among other reasons, because he was not convicted by the Senate after impeachment. The court says flatly in this opinion by John Roberts, the Chief Justice, that finds no support in the text of the Constitution. They completely say they are not going to embrace that sweeping argument by Trump. But as you said, they're rejecting the government's argument as well. So they've taken this middle ground, which is what we thought they would do after the argument. I do think it is surprising, as we've talked about, they've given the lower court judge more of a roadmap on the kind of things that may be considered unofficial. And so, for example, conversations with the vice president, with members of the Justice Department, those are kind of core kind of duties of the president to communicate with people in his administration. That would be considered official unless the government can show that there are other purposes to it. For example, did Trump have any business talking to the vice president about certification? That's not something that is really delegated to the president to be concerned about. So that's going to be, I think, part of how they try to parse that. It's going to take some time. I think it's going to make it difficult for a trial to take place before November, but I don't think that we can say it's impossible. I think that there is a possibility that Jack Smith could come back and say, I'm going to streamline this indictment again, as we've been discussing. Let's go forward now. She will then make determinations on which of those specific charges and allegations are unofficial that can go forward with the guidance that the Supreme Court has handed down today. And then Trump will be able to try to appeal that back up. The D.C. Circuit, I believe, will quickly say no. And then the court, when it gets to the court, I think if we understand the Supreme Court and what we see the Supreme Court, what John Roberts wants to do is have the Supreme Court out of the election. And I think if what he's given them is a clear roadmap as the majority author of this opinion. And so whatever comes back to the court, I think as long as it is within this roadmap, they won't take this back up. So, yes, whatever happens next on official versus unofficial could still be appealed, but that is different than what they've done today. That could go very quickly up and then back down.
So you mentioned communications with the vice president or the Department of Justice. Does Chief Roberts' decision lay out in this so-called roadmap whether communications with secretaries of states or state legislatures would be official or unofficial?
Those are things that I think Jack Smith still will try to argue and be able to go forward with. And that came up during the oral argument in a series of exchanges with Justice Barrett, who's a conservative, followed up by Justice Kagan, who's a liberal, where they really got Trump's lawyer to concede that there were areas of conduct that he's alleged to have done, submitting fraudulent statements to courts, filing in lawsuits, working to submit fraudulent slates of electors. There are a number of things that Trump's lawyer conceded in oral arguments are unofficial conduct. So I think Smith will obviously focus on those, and those are not insignificant.
Okay, Jen Crawford, thank you so much. Let's go ahead now to CBS News congressional correspondent Scott McFarland. So, Scott, what does this mean for the trial of the former president?
They are sending this matter back with all kinds of bear traps to the district court judge Tanya Chutkan here in Washington, D.C., who does not exactly have an open calendar from now in perpetuity. And they're going to ask her to hear arguments on any number of issues. And all of that raises the likelihood this trial is going to get slowed down prohibitively over a matter of months, not days or weeks. You'll recall.
Slow down trial. Let's go. This is all going to work out for Trump beautifully, because you have to remember it's going to slow down months. He's going to this is just me. He's going to take office, and that slowdown is going to come to a complete halt because he's going to be like, hey, I'm president now. That's enough. Thank you. And that's going to be over. Trust me, any weird probation or whatever he has from these 34 counts, that's going to be done as well. All of this is looking up and up for Trump. He's been talking about having immunity for a long time. And honestly, it's pretty necessary because this is what we've been talking about the whole time when it comes to what's happening to Trump. You know, and I've said many times, if all of a sudden Trump took office, or Trump had a great second term and then someone else took office and they're like, I want to try Biden. And now I'm going to go after Biden. And next thing you know, he's, 80, whatever, he'd be like 86 years old by then. And they're like, I want to put him in jail for the rest of his life. It would just keep going back and forth. They would just keep trying to make cases on each other, lock up political opponents. It would be terrible for the country. Terrible for the country. And at least now, with what's going on with this decision, that won't be able to happen. Now, again, it's happening with official acts, not unofficial acts, and then there's going to be a whole argument of what's official, what isn't official. In my opinion, him talking with Pence about anything is pretty much official. That's where I'm seeing it. I think that's an official act. He's asking him about the election. Hey, we're in this together. I think we won. What's going on? I think that's an official act. I think this is all going to be looking up for Trump, and they're going to talk about how he is a king now and there's no rules for him and all this stuff. I can't wait to see it happen. Joe Biden has a lot to say about this whole ruling. He's very upset about it. Looking kind of tan. See what I mean? Like, what did they do? They should have been like, hey, we need some lighting for Joe, this, that. I'm going to speed this up a little bit. I'm going to be honest, okay? Listen, Joe talks slow. He still, he might be forming straight sentences, but he's still talking slow. I'm going to speed it up just a little bit. You're still going to be able to understand. You won't even notice. He might even sound normal. Listen to this.
For all practical purposes, today's decision almost certainly means that there are virtually no limits on what a president can do. This is a fundamentally new principle, and it's a dangerous precedent, because the power of the office will no longer be constrained by the law, even including the Supreme Court of the United States. The only limits will be self-imposed by the president alone. This decision today has continued the court's attack in recent years on a wide range of long-established legal principles in our nation, from gutting voting rights and civil rights, to taking away a woman's right to choose, to today's decision that undermines the rule of law of this nation. Nearly 4 years ago, my predecessor sent a violent mob to the U.S. Capitol to stop the peaceful transfer of power. We all saw it with our own eyes. We sat there and watched it happen that day. Attack on the police, the ransacking of the Capitol, a mob literally hunting down the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, gallows erected to hang the Vice President, Mike Pence. I think it's fair to say it's one of the darkest days in the history of America. Now the man who sent that mob to the U.S. Capitol is facing potential criminal conviction for what happened that day. And the American people deserve to have an answer in the courts before the upcoming election. The public has a right to know the answer about what happened on January 6th before they are asked to vote again this year. Now, because of today's decision, that is highly, highly unlikely. It's a terrible disservice to the people of this nation. So now the American people will have to do what the courts should have been willing to do, but will not. The American people have to render a judgment about Donald Trump's behavior. The American people must decide whether Donald Trump's assault on our democracy on January 6th makes him unfit for public office in the highest office in the land. The American people must decide if Trump's embrace of violence to preserve his power.
I just have to say, is this not the type of interference that Trump has been talking about time and time again? You just heard that there's a decision that's been made by the Supreme Court, and you, as the president, are going on a huge platform and you're speaking about how this shouldn't be because you want it so he can be prosecuted. Is this not the interference that Trump has been talking about this entire time? Is this not election interference? What are you doing? You're sitting there saying, hey, no. He has to get prosecuted. He has to get prosecuted, and it has to happen before November. Do you understand that's what he's saying? He's saying this shouldn't get slowed down, and he needs to get prosecuted. Is he not interfering? Am I crazy? This sounds like you're trying to interfere. You're trying to put out this huge statement to influence the Supreme Court to possibly reverse their decision, which is not really possible right now, but you're trying to influence that. and you're trying to put it out to the American people. Hey, 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 this shouldn't be slowed down. You guys deserve to know what happened now. You're trying to get this guy some kind of conviction so you can just run pretty much unopposed because the other guy will be in jail. Is this not the interference that Trump has been talking about every day he stepped outside this courthouse? I think it is. This is crazy. Absolutely crazy. And here's the thing. You know what the American people really deserve to know when it comes to that whole thing? How many FBI agents were in the crowd? How many? Because it's not zero. Stephen A.'s son was told that there were agents, but he wasn't told how many. He's told that the agents were there because there was domestic terrorists in the crowd, apparently, whatever that means. Because, you know, who knows who they're deciding who a domestic terrorist is. So that means they said there was 19 of those people, those domestic people. There's 19. Was there one agent per guy? Does that mean there was 20 agents in the crowd? Or was it 2 per guy? That means there was 40 agents in the crowd. And who were those agents? And were they yelling things? Were they at the windows? Were they saying go inside? That's what the American people deserve to know, because that changes everything. If even one of them were one of those people. I get so heated when I talk about this because all the facts are there. And I've laid it out, and I'm going to repost it. I posted it on my main channel. I'm going to repost it on this channel because there's so much to that. You know, from Trump asking if Nancy needed 10,000 National Guard. She says no. The whole thing takes place. Stephen A.'s son, who's the ex-police Capitol Police Chief. It's like such a weird title. He was there. He wants the National Guard. He's calling the chain of Pelosi. It goes Stephen A. son, this person that he's calling, one of these generals, I forget what his name was, and Pelosi. He's calling saying, hey, I need the National Guard. This general saying, no, I don't like the optics. He's like, I have to go higher up to figure out if we can do this. Who's the higher up? It's Nancy. Meanwhile, I get so heated talking about this. Meanwhile, Nancy's in a bunker. How do I know this? Her own daughter was filming her and they put out the film. So Nancy's in a bunker. She's watching what's happening on the TV. Instead of going and getting the National Guard, she sits and watches and runs off through this whole little bunker thing that they have going on, ignoring the calls from Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith made his first call at 1:10 p.m. Did not receive National Guard until 6:30. Stephen A. Smith could see National Guard that he could have access to. He wanted those guys. They said no. They sent those guys away. He got the evening shift National Guards. Then they arrived at 6:30, pretty much after, not after everything, but the brunt of it had calmed down. The whole time, Stephen A. Smith is calling and calling and calling. And this general, who's right below Nancy Pelosi, is saying, we don't like the optics of the National Guard being there. And now somehow they're putting it on Trump as he's the one who should have sent the National Guard, when in reality, it was her responsibility to do it the entire time. I'm just saying. That's the end of that TED Talk. That's the end of that TED Talk. Anyway, the ruling is going to be very good for Trump. And the fact that Biden thinks that he can just make a huge statement like this, there's like another 3 minutes to this. This is a whole speech he made. Whole speech he's making about how Trump needs to be prosecuted. If this is not interference, I don't know what is. It's absolutely ridiculous. This is the exact type of stuff that people keep calling Banana Republic, because this guy right now he's saying everything but I want Trump in jail. That's what he's doing right now. He's saying this case has to be tried. The American people deserve to know. It needs to happen before November. It's absolutely ridiculous. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think in the comments. Like, subscribe, turn on the notifications. I'm out of here.